Thank you, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are all dreamers. So Terry just outlined his dream for Hong Kong at the end of his talk. But for me, dreams are only relevant as long as they are anchored in some kind of reality. So to start this morning, I'd like to go back to revisit my dreams about a decade ago, when our urban future seems to be in a critical moment. And then I'll see what present realities have unfolded for us today. But to get myself out of trouble, I'll just run this first. Right. So November 2008, to be exact, at the first Hong Kong A conference, I put up the point that Hong Kong is a city that we both love and hate, maybe at the same time. Now, I've talked about this many times since then, but I think it's always useful to remind ourselves what we have and what we rather not have. What we like about Hong Kong, of course, is our natural resources, the harbor, country park, and the fact that these are in such close proximity to our urban built-up areas. This is one great green vertical wall. Our efficient infrastructure, our rich, compact urban fabric, our vibrant public realm, both traditional and contemporary. But equally, there are lots of things that we'd rather not have. Our congestion, our neglect of our resources, like the waterfront for a long time, our environmental insensitivity. This is engineering over-domination. I'm sorry, Kerry. Our dubious attitude towards conservation. And of course, our boring, ubiquitous architecture. Now, the reality is that our population will grow over the next couple of decades, not by much, but the fact is that even today, or even at 2008, our spatial standard per person in terms of living, in terms of school, in terms of our workplace, in terms of everything, is poor, smaller even than Shenzhen. But at the same time, when population grows, we have to find a way to address this third world phenomena. But we are saying that we don't want reclamation, we don't want wall effect buildings, we don't want too high buildings, we don't want erasure or demolition of whole districts. So how are we going to move forward? Now, I think it means that we need to make choices. Difficult choices, but intelligent choices. And I thought that we need to look at things not in isolation, but as a whole picture. And these are some of the issues that I highlighted then, 2008, still relevant today, I think, on building height, density, open space, connectivity, heritage, architecture. Let's look at the issue of building heights, which is inseparable from the issue of density. Because building high used to be just a matter of ego. But in 20th century New York, 20th century Hong Kong, building high is actually a solution to our problems. And it's going to be a solution to most of the world's metropolis going into the future. It allows us to escape a scenario like this in Beijing or in LA. But people are rightly concerned that unchecked heights are going to be a problem, like a single-story building that breaches the ridgeline, for instance. But we have to remember that if we have to achieve a certain degree of density, which we must, artificially compressing buildings would just destroy the environment on the ground. creating wall buildings without adequate penetration and separation. So even look at our skyline. We don't want too many excessively tall buildings. I know that's being few sentiments, but there are room for us to build of a certain appropriate height in relation to the cityscape where needed. And these are some of the suggestions that I put forward. And you can see that at that time, behind the West Kowloon Cultural District, or within the West Kowloon Cultural District, I was actually proposing to build something much higher than it is building at the moment. And look at Central. And I think there are scope for more high-rise buildings, even in front of IFC. Because what we are looking at could be a step-down effect like the Manhattan waterfront before the World Trade Center towers come down. On the other hand, there are areas in the city where we shouldn't build any higher, like the Central Market, because it's so condensed and congested already all around. What we need to do is just to keep it low and keep it new life. So the idea is that when it comes to heights and density, we really need an intelligent distribution. It can't be one rule fits all. We have to look at it place by place, especially within our traditional built-up urban areas. The issue of open space is the other thing that needs a consensus, I think, on how to move forward. Because we are not New York, we don't have a Central Park. We're not London, we don't have a Hyde Park. We do have series of pockets of open space distributed somewhere for historical reasons or whatever reasons. We could always ask for more, but I think we should ask for something else. We should ask for better quality and we should ask for better accessibility instead of just asking for more. So I've always advocated that once we had this waterfront promenade in place, we should link our existing parks and gardens all into one continuous whole. So when we designed Tamar, creating this green carpet is really with that objective in mind, completing a vital link between the future waterfront and the city and Hong Kong Park, and hopefully botanical gardens. When we talk about quality, we have to talk about accessibility. This is not what I call friendly or accessible. This lawn fenced off, not what I called really usable. That is just a neglected resources that we should exploit. So quality, not quantity, is what we should be aiming for when it comes to the issue of open space. We talked about a lot of connectivity, but we have to realize that connectivity is not just connecting point A to point B. This is not what we want, although it serves the purpose. We are talking about an integrated connectivity. We have spatial and visual integration. We are talking about a fusion of the public realm and the private realm to make it interactive. And when we talk about heritage, we should not just be talking about keeping things as it was. We should be talking about energizing it. And one of the things that could energize things is to add new elements like the roof on the Lyon Opera. So when it comes to the east wing or the west wing of the central government offices, what I had hoped for is some creative intervention of the new, which didn't happen, unfortunately. The same applies to redevelopment of whole districts. We don't want wholesale demolition, but we can't afford to keep things unchanged. So what we should be looking at, something that we did for Guangzhou, is introducing something new to integrate with the old so that 1 plus 1 is greater than 2. The reason, however, that people are very wary of adding new things, that is still, maybe not among professionals, but certainly among the public, they are suspicious of anything new. So in this URA promotional image at that time, they show the streets, but the towers disappear. Because once you show the towers, they are not urban friendly, most of them. Which really brings me to this last point, because in these traditional streets, it's not just the public rim, it's the buildings around it and the whole ambience that could contribute. So architecture is an important element in urban design because it provides the proper setting and it contributes to the ambience of the place. Now, once upon a time, we have architecture who could do that. Nothing spectacular, but something human, proper scale. But since then, these becomes the norm. And when it comes to economy of operation, standardization of bay windows, balconies, and so forth, have all led to rather inhuman architecture that did nothing to enrich the urban environment. Not only that, our current building law have left us with almost just one building typology, which is a tower and a podium. And the worst case is that the podium is a car parking podium. So we want to create something creative. That is not encouraged under the building code unless you are willing to put up with great loss of development potential. That is not the profile that is personally permissible under the building code. Nor that. So projects like these, probably something a final year student could dream of. It's not possible simply because it's practically not encouraged. Nor that, nor these. So what we need are new laws, building codes, that are conducive to innovative design. And that is the last factor in creating a better urban environment. So what I had hoped for is that we have a new metro plan that could consider holistically a combination of all these issues, and a review of the buildings ordinance that could consider, apart from safety and health, all the issues related to good architecture. Now, that was 2008. The dream didn't come true, of course. There's no review. There's no metro plan. Today is 22nd of April, 2016. So where are we now? Now, Kerry just worried that I would be too critical. Don't worry. Actually, things are not that bad. Let's look at the problem of the land. We are now all aware that we have to be inventive in creating land and addressing our problems of population growth and a respectable living environment. The Hong Kong IA has taken initiative to create a study like this, man-made islands in the south, which is a very good start. That building is not demolished, it's kept low. I know that it was kept low not because of the issues of height or density, but because of collective memory, I think. But fine, who's complaining? That's kept, but it a golden opportunity in my mind of introducing new elements to really energize it. But that's another story. On the issue of building height, we won some battles to break away from an artificially kept low height for some buildings, like Hotel Icon on the waterfront. We argued with the planning department and the town planning board that by breaking the heights, we managed to create a building that is visually permeable, that has ventilation through its middle, enhancing the microclimatic condition on both sides. And it is transparent. It also allows us not to occupy fully the ground, creating courtyards both on the hotel side and on the school side. And it allows us to use levels up in the air for meaningful amenity usage. And when you look at it from the waterfront, although it does stand out, it actually is really part of a fairly natural skyline. And I'm glad to learn that since then, the planning department has actually released the height restriction of all the buildings on Tsim Sha Tsui East, so that in future, if they do develop, they would probably not having to have really solid blocks all the way going down to the ground like that. On the issue of open space, we have since 2008 a number of really well-designed open space with quality and with reasonable ease of access, like the Kwun Tong waterfront, credit to ASD and the Kowloon East Development Office, like Oil Street Depot, a courtyard devoted to community use, easily accessible for the community in the neighborhood. Hai Chi Lane, credit to Ronald Liu and Partners, and the Kwun Tong open space and art space, again, easily accessible to the community, well designed. If you recall, a hazy memory, that when we suggested a master plan for West Kowloon Cultural District, it's not really about how big the park is. It's really about how accessible and how connected it is to the surrounding district. And I'm hoping that when the West Kowloon Cultural District is realized, the issue of accessibility and the quality of usage of open space could be duly addressed. Luckily, we completed Tema. And it's an open space that allows people to relax, to enjoy, to have a proper relationship with the harbor, and to allow the moods of the city in various forms to express itself. But apart from being a park, it's also enhancing the city's connectivity. Connectivity that allows a grand passage between the inner city and the waterfront that the public could use without interfering with the daily activities of both the electrical and the exco on either side. The connectivity which is integrated both visually and spatially with the architecture. However, I have to admit that not everything is perfect. Although this is working well, at the end of the connection on the south, where we had expected a multi-level and multi-directional connection to the city, everything is just not happening. And then, of course, although it's not crucial to the concept of connectivity, it's still a regret that some of the public spaces, well, not really public, statutory, is not readily accessible to the public. Now, we've done, again, much better when it comes to heritage. This is a dubious start, but we have since then had many good examples where the heritage is respected and energized with a suitable addition of new elements, like the Yuzhongyi Cultural Center, credit to P&T and Metaphor, like the Comic Center, credit to IADIS, the PMQ, the Secretary Carrie mentioned, credit to ASD. For the Central Police Headquarters, perhaps there was some initial Herzogian overreach, but we since worked with the Jockey Club to establish an appropriate integration and introduction of new elements. So by the end of the year, when this is open, this is what you will be looking at. But when it comes to building ordinance, that, to me, remains the most problematic still. This is one of our recent designs last year. I'm not proud of it, not at all. We didn't get the commission, but that's for some other reason. But for some consolation, even the great Sir Norman could not do anything better than this, the Cyber Park. On the other hand, we have been able to do something slightly better in a city other than Hong Kong, like Shenzhen. We did a master plan for a district, this part, for a small city in the northwestern part of Shenzhen, comprising a mart, which is the anchor building, and a small township with emphasis on human-scale streets and squares, walkability, permeability, interface between the public and the private. And we could do that for residential building, something you could never do in Hong Kong. Not with the huge atriums that would be accountable for GFA, not with the sort of step profile that would not be in accordance with the present coverage and plot ratio schedules. Even a simple gesture like a cantilever over a street to enhance the interaction between the private and the public will not be encouraged, let's say, in Hong Kong. And then we have a little museum at the end of the road, a design museum, and all the space that is underneath it is not GFA accountable, because the government accepts that it is really used by the public more than the private. Again, this thing, once upon a time, used to be possible in Hong Kong, is no longer possible. For our design for the Chinese University in Shenzhen, it's the same. We create a series of buildings that is meant to encompass a diversity of open and semi-open spaces that are conducive to interchange and a sense of community. Now, they have rules too. And they also counted the areas underneath it as GFA. They also counted area under the deck as GFA. And they also counted this area as GFA, maybe not the overhang. However, they recognize that because this is an academic building, even though our overall GFA at the end of the day has exceeded what is permissible, they give it an exemption, which means that they encourage it. Now, back in Hong Kong, the Zhuhai campus, we did something unusual. And luckily, we have a sloping lawn underneath the overhanging library, so that we are not required to count that for GFA. But they do require us to count the staircase as GFA because it's walkable. And they have to count all these, of course, as GFA. It's lucky that the client is willing to accept that loss. And when it comes to building volumes, because this is a sports hall, this is the lecture theatre all around, and therefore the common area has a larger headroom, they only allow it if we put in a series of, what they call anti-abusive features on the ceiling, which is supporting nothing. It's just there to prevent you from adding something on later. That's fine. At least we got partially what we want. The other project, East Kowloon Cultural Center, is a cultural complex of 2 cinemas, 2 theaters, and a series of ancillary places. But the key of this building relies on an integration of a public rim that is an extension of the circulation network in the neighborhood, so that the public space in the cultural center serves both people who go to the events and people who are commuting daily from one destination to another within that district. In that instance, it creates a room where culture could be shared by all, and where, even though it is a cultural center, it will not become a white elephant when there are no events in that place. But again, all this comes at a price, because all these public areas that you see are of such a height that they have to count for more than one level of GFA. Now that's only possible because for some reason, this site has a permissible plot ratio way above what the client is prepared to put on. So that is not a problem. But what I want to say is, these are the exceptions. These are not the norm. And for most of us in Hong Kong, that is the norm. And that is compromising our efforts, not as architects, but as urban designers, where architecture is an important backdrop of the city, where architecture is actually something that helps shape urban spaces and places. So, we don't have that dream realized, the Metro Plan and a review of the building law in 2012. It's unlikely, I should have asked Kerry that will happen in 2017 nor 2012, 22nd. However, I think that if we don't have things from the top down, change should always come from the bottom up. If we keep our dreams alive, if we have our convictions on the approaches to all these issues that I mentioned, then collectively, if we take our chances when some exceptional circumstances present themselves, then we might be able to contribute to moving forward our dreams for the betterment of a city. Who knows? One of these days, this fence might come down, and this link might yet be made possible. Thank you.